Alright, welcome. This is Tommy from Hero Maker. I want to give you a quick overview on how to use the TopoTool plugin. So the first thing you want to do when you've got it already added to your project, I've got one called Plugin Test. It's just where I do my testing for the plugin just to make sure it works before we send it out. You're going to want to go to TopoTool plugin content, the Topo tool, the Topo widget. You're going to right click Run Editor Utility widget. And this is where the majority of the work is going to happen. You're going to be given this welcome screen where you can do either a default height map or you can load one of your previous ones. These get saved in the save folders, so if you are like me and you delete the save folders from time to time, you will delete your topo points that have been saved. So let's go ahead and start with a new height map. It's just what the default is, and we'll go through sort of all the features that the app provides. And this is valid for 4.2.3 and 4.2.4 versions of the Unreal Engine. So as you can see, when you let me move it so you can see it as opposed to these guys. So this is a topo line. It is a topographical line, and it has an altitude. That's basically it. You get to drag points, and it uses Catmull-ROM spline calculations to determine where the lines will go. If you want more control, you want to do more fine-tune, you can add spline points, and this little red X in the center is your geometric center. So if you do something crazy, it can be outside the lines, and if you select it, it just helps you move the whole thing. So basically what I'd like to do is, take one topo line, do another, add it smaller, and change the altitude to like 750. And now you've got one line at 500, one line at 750, and you build up your topography like that, just like a regular topographic map. And now that you have these little X's that are just one thing unto themselves, and you see you no longer have the option to add a spline point, these are peaks and valleys. So if you want to add another one, you can add another one. Default altitude is 1,000, and that sounds good because I want to peak to this mountain that I've just created. You can add a river. They default at just 2 points, but you can add more. And as you see, there's a little bit of a curve on the end here, and if you don't like that, you add another spline point and tuck it in really close, and then you can control where the end of the line goes. That's just an artifact of the spline algorithm. Roads are the same things as rivers. I forgot to mention, in rivers, you have width and depth. And if you change your width, you get to see it reflected in the line. But if you change your depth, you don't see a visual representation of that. That just happens on the calculation. So the road here works pretty much just the same way, except there's no depth value. You can change the width also. And then you can add a background image if you want. I'm not going to add one right now because I don't have any that I have the rights to. Right? Actually, no. Let me go to the topo. Let me add in our big logo in the background. And since that doesn't really look good, let's go ahead and clear the image. You also do have an undo function for all the stuff that you do that's with peaks, valleys, topo lines, rivers, and roads. It won't undo adding a background image. That's why there's a separate button. And you gotta just keep going. Like if you moved something just a little bit, every single movement goes into the undo stack, just like you're used to. If you have nothing selected, you'll have no options to change. If you want to, say you change your background image and it is mostly a dark image, like you drew your own topographic map on black paper with a white pencil or something, you can go ahead and change to our dark mode colors, or you can go ahead and choose custom for each thing. And as you can see, it doesn't really work well to do the dark mode on the light, so we're going to go ahead and put our settings back to default here. Now, if you want to go ahead and save your test map, let's say, go ahead and save it as a test map. We'll show this load and save functionality. This uses Unreal's own save game functionality. And there we go. There's our test map. We load it. So let's go ahead and delete something to show you. If you select the center of the topo line, it'll delete the whole thing. If you select just a line, it will delete only one piece. Now, if you want to delete a whole line, so we got this river here, and we've got 3 points, but there's no center line because it's not a topo line. If you want to delete the whole thing, select a point, shift, delete. It deletes the whole thing. If you want to, let's see. Now, we have a few keyboard shortcuts that are sort of unique to the Topo tool. They're listed in the help menu. So there are ways to do a mostly keyboard workflow. You don't have to use the mouse all the time. Won't go through all of them right now, but there's a little helpful menu. That's what the help menu does. Let's go ahead and load that test map back in, and voila, what we had working on was earlier. What we had back is what we were working on earlier. Now, one last thing before we go into the generation. So you may have seen up in the corners is this little altitude value, and it defaults to 0. It basically sets the border of your map. So right now, our map is all 0, 0, 0. If you wanted to set something to a high point on the map, say we wanted to set that to 1,000, basically think of it as this very corner is at 1,000, and it does a linear interpolation all the way down to 0 here, a linear interpolation all the way down to 0 in the bottom left, and then it's just straight across from the bottom left to the bottom right, and from the top right to the bottom right. So now if you want to go click Generate, this is your generate render height map, generate height map dialog box. We'll go ahead and browse to a file. I like to use just filepath.r16. This is what the file format it saves in. .r16 is a binary format with 16-bit color depth, because what we're creating here is we're creating a black and white height map that we'll later use to import into the Unreal Engine. So it will save as the .r16 file, which your computer may not recognize right away, but it is a legitimate file type. And by default, I like to only have noise selected. This is Perlin noise generation. The erosion is hydraulic erosion, and it adds a little bit, but not as much as noise adds, and it also takes about twice as long to do any maps, because this is truly a render, so it won't be a snap of the fingers and done. It'll actually take a couple minutes, especially if you hit add erosion. So we've got it. We're happy with it. We're gonna go ahead and click render, and it may take a few minutes. During this time, you'll notice Unreal is unresponsive. That is okay. That is expected behavior. Let's open Task Manager and let me show you what's happening. If you open Task Manager, you see that the UE4 editor, it says it's not responding, but yet it's running with about, on my machine, 25% CPU. And that means it's working. I don't know why it says it's not responding. It's probably because it can't get anything from the operating system. But it says it's not responding, but as long as you have actual values in that CPU column, you're doing all right. I've done this many times, and that's always held true for me. And you will get a new dialog box on the Topo widget once it's done rendering. It'll say like, and we'll show you in just a second here. I'll go ahead and speed up the video. All right, and we're back. We have finished height map render, and click OK. You return back to the generate height map screen. Hit cancel to go back, and we're back where we are. So we're going to go ahead and close out the Topo widget, and I'm going to show you what to do with what the output is. So what this all created was a .r16 height map file. So you want to come over here to the landscape in your Unreal Editor. Going to click new. You're going to go for a new landscape, import from file. You're going to go for a height map file and click filepath.r16, which is just my default. You're going to see it has a default resolution of 1480 by 1480. That is the resolution that comes out of the Topo tool. That's fixed. And you go ahead and click import. And we'll go ahead and get out from under the terrain here. And you'll see that we have created exactly what we told the machine to create. So we had I didn't show you guys, but one of the peaks and valleys was a deep valley. And you can see the peak, and you can see the mountain that we created. Now, if you want there to be more of a mountainous look to it instead of this plateau and then another peak, you're going to add another topo line in between here and here, and go ahead and like sort of level it out. But it's a non-destructive workflow, or at least it's not a destructive workflow, so you can go back and do this several times. As you'll see down here, we got a road, and if you see over here, we have a river. What I recommend for both of these, Let me speed up the camera speed so we can zoom through here. What I recommend is, you see how it's a little bit choppy? I would go ahead and go for a, let's see, a smooth brush, and just go over it once. Just over it once, and then you've got this really nice flat path that works great. We're going to come over here to the river, and we're going to do the same thing. Just, well, maybe not that strong, so take down the tool strength a little bit. So there's a little bit of post-processing that you might want to do, especially if you care about the edges of the map. They're going to always be a little ridged. And you don't want to have too strong of a tool, because then you're going to see this smoothing where the purlin noise just gets erased. And the purlin noise is really what creates this nice, realistic looking terrain. All the other stuff is nice, but that purlin noise gives it that real nice natural variation. So yeah, go ahead and give this a go yourselves. Email me at heromaker3d@gmail.com if you have any questions or need any support for using the Topo tool. And thanks for watching.